In the southern hemisphere of the Earth, there is a continent all on its own. Australia is a huge island with a natural history of 65 million years of independent development. Ninety 90% of the territory is completely flat. This is a land of vast distances, high plains and plateaus with just the very occasional scattered hills and weather-beaten mountain ranges. But in the Northern Territory, there is a mysterious place that conceals all the wild essence of Australia. The magic country of the ancient inhabitants of this great island, one of the biggest national parks in the world. Ever since the time that Australia separated from the rest of the land that had emerged, things have changed a great deal for its wildlife. The symbol of this is, of course, the kangaroo, living proof of this theory. It's a marsupial, a type of mammal with no placenta, which houses its young inside a bag. An archaic animal order whose sanctuary is here. The marsupials have evolved and diversified in 1,000 ways in order to take advantage of all of Australia's resources. This is a wombat, the equivalent with additional bag of the badgers of the Northern Hemisphere. As it likes digging, it has its opening towards the back, the opposite way round from the kangaroos, so as not to fill its sack with earth when it is working. Birds have also developed peculiar designs. The nightjar hunts at night, and until night falls, it stays completely still, pretending to be just another piece of dry wood. The Australian landscape moves and screeches. At least this is the feeling you get from these cockatoos, which can be seen everywhere. These particular ones are members of the species called sanguine cockatoo. Large, crested, and used to moving around in large groups, cockatoos are exceptionally intelligent birds. They have a constant need to express themselves in front of the rest of the group. By moving their crests, screeching, and doing acrobatic exercises, they show the others how they feel. They have special feathers that give off a powder to protect the rest of the plumage. Cockatoos are almost exclusively vegetarian, but this one isn't. There are 20 species of monitor, known here as the guana in Australia. It's a very active predator, although it does not turn down carrion as a source of protein. It patrols the ground, sucking at the air. Its forked tongue is sensitive to the smells in the atmosphere. Interesting smells because they lead to the food that its cold body needs to stay alive. Monitor meat is popular with the aborigines who have always hunted them in Kakadu. Another spectacular reptile is the frilled lizard. Its spiny neck frills make it look like a mythological dragon 90 centimeters long. It's looking for insects and it knows very well where to find them. Kakadu is enormously rich in insects and a new species is discovered almost every month. It's calculated that there are still about 10,000 species which have yet to be recorded for science. The weave ants from colonies of over 500,000 female workers descended from one single enormous queen, around which they build a nest out of acacia leaves bound together with silk. The males only participate in courting flights with virgin queens and then die before returning to the nest. An efficient society in which the individual members always work altruistically for the good of the colony. Kakadu keeps the essence of Australia on the plains. These are crossed by the oldest rocks on the land and maybe on the planet. Here, the last aborigines to maintain their traditional culture still intact are still surviving. A culture that is based on what they call the time of dreams. Warramurungunji, a female spirit, appeared from the sea and covered the earth, giving shape to living creatures. This is the Man of Light, the Lord of the Storms. The culture of these Aboriginal peoples is characterized by the spirits of ancestors and a profound identification with the land that surrounds them. One of the elders explained it like this: the animals are like a family, the earth is our mother, the eagles are our cousins, the trees have blood pumping through them, which is just like ours. We are all one. When the white man arrived here, he had the impression that the Aborigines neither cultivated their lands nor used them for grazing animals. Apparently there were no settled villages nor any domestic animals. Today we know that this is not true. The land has owners that looked after the house and the trees. The reason for the Aborigines' apparent laziness was that they spent very few hours a day in search of food and other necessary supplies. They used the rest of their time to observe nature and cultivate their spirits. There is a tremendous philosophical force hidden beneath their apparently simple traditional way of life. This has survived until today in a relatively pure state and forged the Australian landscape with the help of a formidable ally: fire. In the season which they call Yeke, which covers April and May, they started controlled fires that cleaned the forest floors and encouraged new shoots to appear. This ancient practice was so successful that it is still carried out today. Each year, Park Service agents set fire to the grasslands at the beginning of the dry season in order to prevent bigger, uncontrolled fires from occurring later in the year because of the build-up of dead plant matter. The trees and the bushes are only slightly singed, while the forest floor is left clear and ready for the next rainy season. Almost all the animals of Kakadu are used to the annual rites of fire, which mean death for the smallest of them. When everything is over, the charred bodies of insects and reptiles cover the earth, which becomes a feasting ground for predators. But some animals, like this dingo, also like their meat less well done. Kangaroos and wallabies graze in the new plains opened by the flames, very near the occasional new-grown thickets that allow hunters to approach without being seen. The mixed landscape of woods and clearings gives them an advantage. These frontier areas in nature are always the richest in terms of species. Modern zoology refers to them as ecotone, but the Aborigines already knew about their advantages for hunting purposes. The dingo also knew about them. This is the greatest land-based predator in Australia. Nowadays it is considered to be a native animal, although it seems that it reached the island 4,000 years ago. It is a relative of the semi-domestic dogs of Southeast Asia and was probably first brought here by humans, although we still do not know by whom, as the Aborigines were here thousands of years before. The mysterious dingo, like its relatives from the northern hemisphere, the fox and the wolf, arouses equally passionate feelings of love and hate. On the one hand, it is a wild animal which has become typical of this country and plays its part as a predator very well. But on the other, it attacks sheep and is blamed for having eliminated valuable species such as the Tasmanian wolf and the Tasmanian devil. The farmers hate it so much that they have built the longest fence in the world to keep them away from the sheep, a 3,300-mile-long wire fence. But this large yellow dog is still here. In a pack or on its own, it covers scores of kilometers every day, hunting animals of all sizes and trying to avoid humans whose shotguns are often their allies. Kangaroos and wallabies eat grass like sheep, and so they are often seen as competition and are shot by poachers' guns. The dingoes can feed on abandoned corpses for weeks, and this allows them to spread even wider across the country. In March, after the heavy rains, the season which the Aborigines call Bengereng begins. The dry, fire-blackened plains are totally saturated with water until no more drops can be absorbed. Rivers and lakes burst their banks and cover the land with an almost continuous layer of water from 1 to 3 meters deep in which life is reborn. This is the other side of the Kakadu National Park, and these are the domains of the greatest killer in Australia. Now that it's all one big riverbank, nobody wants to be on the same side as him. This is the estuarine or saltwater crocodile, the largest reptile on the planet, a 7-meter-long titan which has to eat a lot to maintain its armored body. The Aborigines associate it with Ginga, a mythical lizard-shaped being that created the country out of rocks. In Kakadu, everyone has one eye on the surface of the water and the other on the sky. It is also a time of plenty for the huge osprey eagle. These are fisher eagles, and they spend all the hours of the daylight watching from any hilltop or making reconnoitering flights from one hilltop to another. For the Aborigines, these are the incarnation of the Marawati, the ancestral creature that brought irises in its claws from the sea to the flooded plains. It is at this time of the year that the visitor can best appreciate why Kakadu has been declared part of the World Heritage by the UNESCO. However, this wild exuberance was not attractive to the original white colonists as a place to settle because of the continual floods. Thanks to this, it has remained intact until today and is considered as the real Australia, just as it once was. This is what it must seem like to these magpie geese. They arrive at the end of May from their breeding grounds in search of wild rice which grows quickly under their wet feet. Wet but flipperless, these strange Anatidae have no webbed feet, so they can cling to the branches of the trees if necessary. A very useful skill in a place infested with crocodiles. Nevertheless, they have to come down sometimes. As the waters recede, these green pastures of fresh grass appear providing food for an army of specialized beaks. Each species tries to take advantage of this enormous stew by inserting the tool with which nature has blessed them. The sacred ibis inserts its curved beak with great care, probing the mud in search of small prey. The herons walk along trying to harpoon something, and the spoonbills swing their large spoon from one side to another. The concentration of insects, crustaceans, and fish increases as the water in the ponds evaporates. Then all styles are mixed in a festival of fishing methods. However, no bird should forget that the mud in Kakadu has teeth. The estuarine crocodiles can also live in freshwater, going up to 300 kilometers inland. They have an unlimited appetite and even swallow big stones which stay in their guts so that their bodies stay lower in the water. These real man-eaters are responsible for countless attacks on humans in their areas. However, the thrill and the chance to see the big crocs brings thousands of dollars to Kakadu. Perhaps this looks like a boat full of meat for some of them, but they will get more out of the tourists if they don't eat them. For conservation purposes, visitors to Kakadu are channeled to just a few places which the park keepers control perfectly. And if they want to see crocodiles, they have the chance to get a very close look.
What we have here is one of these saltwater crocodiles, and you can see from the size of their jaws that they have voracious appetites. And these are extremely dangerous animals, as you can see. They're capable.
If this man is not careful, he may be in for instant early retirement.
These animals are extremely dangerous, so it's always wise to give them a very wide berth.
These crocodiles are still wild and can move incredibly fast.
As you can see, they're very fast, and they've got a wicked set of jaws.
Although the old croc loses some of its natural dignity in these surroundings, this is preferable to trying to control myriads of individual tourists in these marshes with the risk that when the agency guide makes a recount of those who have returned to the buses, his numbers don't add up.
Animals are capable of moving deep inland
The fascinating spectacle encourages the sale of a whole host of articles with pictures of the estuarine crocodiles.
they don't have enough.
The profits obtained are used in the care and management of the park, so this great reptile becomes a sort of benefactor for all the flora and fauna of Kakadu.
To be able to sustain this incredible appetite that they have.
Their vast herds amaze people who can't help imagining meeting one face to face.
When they don't have enough.
The people clearly adore them. When the first colonists gave up any attempts to settle in the area because of the harshness of its climate, the crocodiles became important and notorious. Only two types of white men were tough enough to stay here: missionaries and crocodile hunters. Two professions which were equally difficult. Fortunately, the authorities put a stop to crocodile hunting before it wiped them out. Crocodiles do not chew their food, they swallow their prey whole, leaving the hard work to their gastric acids, which can take months to metabolize a large body. This fact, combined with the fossils of 17-meter-long estuarine crocodiles, gives us an idea of what these animals are capable of polishing off. When the water layer has gone down enough, the characteristic ponds and lagoons known as billabongs are formed. The billabongs attract birds with aquatic connections from all over Australia. Pelicans, waders and sandpipers strive each in their own way to capture fish and the invertebrates swimming below. This is a splendid moment for birds, as there is not enough water for crocodiles to be a problem, and only animals that can fly may reach this area without sinking. The bad times return soon afterwards with the drought, and the birds will have to leave. Then the dry heart of Kakadu will be populated by furry Australians with bags. Someone called this land Never Never Land because those who have seen it never want to leave. This may or may not be true, but the truth is that Kakadu oozes the essence of ancient Australia, the creative spirit of the aboriginal goddess Waramurungundi.